A 40-foot wall of water moving at 40 miles per hour, carrying entire locomotives like toys. May 31st, 1889, it annihilated a town of 30,000 in 10 minutes flat. 2,209 people dead, entire families wiped out, 777 victims never identified. And the men responsible? Andrew Carnegie, Henry Clay Frick, and Andrew Mellon. America's wealthiest tycoons all walked away without paying a dime. Using AI technology, I've restored photographs from the Johnstown flood, one of the deadliest disasters in American history, all caused by human negligence. You'll see the exclusive fishing club, the doomed dam, and the horrific aftermath. This isn't just a disaster story. It's about what happens when the powerful play God with other people's lives. Let's go back to May 31st, 1889. Johnstown, Pennsylvania, 1889, 60 miles east of Pittsburgh, nestled in a narrow valley where three rivers meet. Population 30,000, mostly Welsh and German immigrants who worked at the massive Cambria Iron Works, producing some of America's finest steel. The town had 36 churches, 20 schools, 2 opera houses, even a roller skating rink. This was a prosperous, growing industrial community. But geography cursed Johnstown. Surrounded by steep Allegheny mountain slopes, the town sat on a natural floodplain. The rivers flooded regularly, minor nuisances that residents had learned to handle. What they didn't know was that 14 miles upstream, a poorly maintained dam held back 20 million tons of water in a private lake. And the owners of that dam were about to make a series of deadly decisions. High above Johnstown sat Lake Connemore, a man-made reservoir created by the South Fork Dam, originally built in 1852 for Pennsylvania's canal system. When railroads made canals obsolete, the dam was abandoned and fell into disrepair. In 1879, Pittsburgh's wealthiest men saw an opportunity. They purchased the dam and reservoir for $2,000, pocket change for them. Their goal? Create an exclusive summer retreat. The South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club counted 61 members. Andrew Carnegie, the steel magnate. Henry Clay Frick, the coke baron. Andrew Mellon, the banking tycoon. Philander Knox, a future Secretary of State. They built a 47-room clubhouse with a dining room seating 150. They constructed 16 massive cottages, actually mansions, along the shoreline. They kept steam yachts, sailboats, and canoes. And they stocked the lake with expensive bass. But to keep those fish from escaping, they made modifications that would prove deadly. The club hired Benjamin Ruff to rebuild the dam. Ruff had zero engineering training. He was a railroad contractor and real estate broker, completely unqualified, and the modifications he made were catastrophic. First, they installed fish screens across the spillway to prevent bass from escaping. This trapped debris and prevented overflow from draining properly. Second, they lowered the dam by 3 feet to allow 2 carriages to pass at once, reducing it to just 4 feet above the spillway. Third, they removed the original discharge pipes, sold them for scrap metal. Without these pipes, the reservoir couldn't be drained for repairs or to relieve pressure. Engineers warned them. Daniel Morrell, president of the Cambria Iron Company in Johnstown, sent his own engineer to inspect the dam in 1880. His report was damning, disaster waiting to happen. Morrell even offered to pay for repairs himself. The club dismissed him. Benjamin Ruff wrote to Morrell, "You and your people are in no danger from our enterprise." He was catastrophically wrong. At 3:10 p.m. the dam gave way. First a crack, then a chunk. Then the entire center section collapsed in a massive roar. 20 million tons of water, equal to Niagara Falls flowing for 36 minutes, exploded down the valley at 40 miles per hour. A 40-foot wall of debris-laden destruction. Some thought it was the end of the world. They weren't entirely wrong. The wave hit South Fork Village first, 3 miles below the dam, gone in seconds. Then Mineral Point, destroyed. Then East Conemaugh and Woodvale, annihilated. The floods swept up everything. Trees, houses, railroad cars, even 170,000-pound locomotives lifted like matchsticks. 33 train engines were pulled into the torrent, creating deadly battering rams of metal and steam. Some people received warning. Telegraph operator Emma Ehrenfeld in South Fork tapped out the alarm. The dam is giving way. But 14 miles downstream in Johnstown, residents had heard this warning before during previous minor floods. Most ignored it. They were used to spring flooding. As the water rose in their streets, they moved belongings to upper floors, standard procedure. At 4:07 p.m. the wave hit Johnstown. 10 minutes, that's all it took to destroy 4 square miles of city and kill over 2,000 people. Then they saw it. A 40-foot wall, not of water, but of debris. Houses, barns, locomotives, trees, telegraph poles, all churned together in a grinding, crushing mass. The wave moved faster than people could run. Entire buildings were ripped from foundations and pulverized instantly. 1,600 homes destroyed in minutes, 280 businesses obliterated. The massive Cambria Iron Works, pride of Johnstown, severely damaged. People died in horrific ways. Some were crushed when their homes collapsed. Others drowned, trapped in upper floors. Families were torn apart. Downstream from Johnstown, the Pennsylvania Railroad's stone bridge created a bottleneck. As the flood debris reached it, the bridge held firm, too firm. Wreckage piled up against it. Houses, trees, bodies, everything. The pile grew 30 feet high and covered 30 acres. Then, horror upon horror, the debris caught fire. Oil from overturned railroad tankers ignited. 80 people who had survived by clinging to floating wreckage now found themselves trapped in a burning pile of debris. Witnesses heard their screams but could do nothing. The flames were too intense. The fire burned for 3 days. Modern researchers still find it difficult to separate who died by drowning versus who died by fire. Johnstown's first telegram for help was stark: send coffins and undertakers. Within days, relief poured in from across America and 18 foreign countries. Over $3.7 million donated, equivalent to over $100 million today. Queen Victoria sent condolences. Pittsburgh sent 1,000 workers. But the most important arrival came on June the 5th, Clara Barton and the American Red Cross. At 67 years old, Barton led 50 volunteers into Johnstown for what would become the Red Cross's first major peacetime disaster relief effort. She stayed 5 months. The Red Cross built temporary housing called Red Cross hotels for homeless families. They distributed food, clothing, and medical supplies. They helped 25,000 people. Barton earned Johnstown's eternal gratitude. This disaster transformed the American Red Cross from a wartime organization into America's primary disaster relief agency, a role it maintains today. Survivors wanted justice. They wanted the South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club held accountable. Lawsuits were filed. Evidence was overwhelming: the dangerous modifications, the ignored warnings, the complete negligence. But the club members were too powerful. They hired the best lawyers money could buy. They had political connections at the highest levels. Courts ruled the flood an act of God. The club and its members paid nothing. $0 in damages. The American Society of Civil Engineers investigated. Their report was suspiciously favorable to the club and then sealed for years. Many suspected corruption. William Shinn, who pushed to keep the report secret, was a railroad and steel industry businessman with ties to club members. Carnegie donated $10,000 and a library to Johnstown. Good PR that cost him almost nothing. But he never admitted responsibility. Neither did Frick, Mellon, or any other member. The South Fork Fishing and Hunting Club quietly dissolved in 1904, selling its assets to pay a mortgage. The members walked away, Johnstown rebuilt. It took 5 years, but the steel town rose from the mud. The population actually increased as immigrants arrived for construction jobs. But the scars remained literal and psychological. Bodies were found as far away as Cincinnati and as late as 1911, 22 years after the flood. 777 victims were never identified. They rest in the plot of the unknown at Grandview Cemetery, their names lost forever. The legal injustice sparked change in American law. The act of God defense weakened. Courts began accepting strict liability, holding people responsible for consequences of their actions, whether intentional or not. The Johnstown flood became a cautionary tale about unregulated industry and unchecked wealth. It exposed the Gilded Age's dark reality. When the rich play, the poor pay. Today, the Johnstown Flood National Memorial stands at the dam site. May 31st is National Dam Safety Awareness Day. 2,209 reasons why we can't forget. You can visit these sites today. The Johnstown Flood Museum, housed in Carnegie's donated library building, tells the complete story with artifacts and photographs. The Johnstown Flood National Memorial at the dam site includes preserved remnants of the South Fork Dam and interpretive exhibits. You can stand where the wealthy played while danger loomed below. The stone bridge still exists, rebuilt and reinforced, still carrying traffic today, a silent witness to horror. The dam was never rebuilt. The Johnstown flood isn't just Pennsylvania history, it's American history. A moment when the consequences of the wealthy's arrogance killed thousands, sparked reform, and changed how we think about corporate responsibility. The water may have receded, but the questions remain. Who pays when the powerful make deadly mistakes? If there is another city, another era, or another moment in history you'd like to see brought back to life, let me know in the comment. Thanks for watching.